In a world where plastic dominates food storage, most of us can't keep vegetables fresh for a week. Yet the Amish are preserving food for 30 years without a single plastic container in sight. When people first hear about the Amish storing food without plastic, their first question is usually, where do they get all this food in the first place? After all, you don't exactly spot Amish families pushing shopping carts down the aisles of Walmart. The answer lies in their remarkable self-sufficient farming system that would make any modern farmer raise their eyebrows and possibly rethink their methods. A typical Amish farm is a powerhouse of production, churning out 12,000 to 15,000 pounds of food annually. To put that in perspective, that's about the weight of 4 average cars in vegetables, fruits, and grains. And they do it all without a single drop of gasoline or a modern tractor in sight. My neighbor once joked that his riding mower had more horsepower than an entire Amish farm, but he couldn't grow a tomato to save his life. The secret lies in their horse-drawn equipment, which might sound primitive, but is anything but. These tools have been refined over generations to be surprisingly efficient. A team of 4 horses can plow and harvest over 40 acres of land, working in perfect harmony with their human partners. There's something almost poetic about watching these farms operate. Unless you're the one behind the plow at 5 a.m., of course. But here's where it gets interesting. Amish farming isn't just about the individual family unit. It's a community effort that would put most modern corporate team-building exercises to shame. When it's time for the big harvests, multiple families come together in what they call work frolics. Picture this. Instead of one farmer on a combine harvester, you've got 20 to 30 people working together, sharing stories, and probably some good-natured ribbing about who can pick corn the fastest. The Amish have also mastered the art of seed saving, which is like having a family heirloom that you can eat. Some Amish communities maintain seed varieties that have been passed down for over 100 years. These aren't your typical store-bought seeds. They're specifically adapted to local conditions and produce plants that are tough as nails. One Amish farmer told me his tomato seeds survived a flood that would have made Noah nervous. Their crop rotation system is another key to their success. Instead of relying on chemical fertilizers, they rotate their crops in a way that naturally enriches the soil. It's like playing musical chairs with vegetables, except everyone wins. One year a field might grow corn, the next beans, then wheat, and so on. This method has kept their soil fertile for generations, while many modern farms struggle with depleted soil. The really clever part? Everything is interconnected. The horses that pull the plows eat some of the grain they help harvest. Their manure fertilizes next year's crops. The vegetable scraps feed the chickens, who provide eggs and more fertilizer. It's like a perfectly choreographed dance where nothing goes to waste. But here's the million-dollar question. With all this food production capability, why not just break down and use modern plastic storage methods? Wouldn't it be easier? This question leads us right into understanding why the Amish make this seemingly complicated choice. Their reasons go far deeper than just tradition. They're rooted in a profound understanding of both food preservation and environmental impact. You might think avoiding plastic is just making life harder, but their reasons for avoiding plastic might actually make you think twice about those leftover containers in your kitchen. The Amish decision to avoid plastic isn't just about being old-fashioned. It's based on some pretty solid science and common sense. Back in the 1950s, when plastic storage containers first hit American kitchens, most Amish communities took one look and said, no thanks. Turns out they might have been onto something. Let's talk about what happens to plastic over time. Ever noticed how your plastic containers get those weird stains after storing spaghetti sauce? Or how they start to smell funny after a while? That's because plastic isn't just sitting there looking pretty, it's actually having a slow chemical reaction with your food. Recent studies show that even BPA-free plastics can leach chemicals into food, especially when heated or exposed to acidic foods. One Amish elder put it perfectly. If the container is changing color, what's it doing to the food? The air circulation issue is another big deal. Plastic creates a tight seal that traps moisture. Great for keeping things fresh for a week, terrible for keeping things fresh for months or years. Traditional Amish storage methods using wood, glass, and ceramic allow food to breathe at just the right rate. It's like the difference between wearing a plastic rain jacket and a wool coat. One traps moisture and makes you sweaty. The other lets your skin breathe while keeping you warm. Here's a fact that might surprise you. Most plastic food containers are designed to last about 1 to 2 years with regular use. Meanwhile, the glass jars and ceramic crocks passed down through Amish families have been in continuous use for 50 plus years. My favorite is the story of an Amish grandmother who still uses her great-grandmother's fermenting crock from 1902. She jokes that it's older than sliced bread, which is actually true since sliced bread wasn't invented until 1928. The environmental aspect can't be ignored either. The average American family throws away about 320 pounds of plastic per year. In contrast, an Amish family's annual waste often fits in a single garbage can. They're not environmental activists. They just never saw the point in buying something you're going to throw away. As one Amish farmer quipped, "We didn't need a scientist to tell us plastic lasts forever. That's exactly why we don't want it." The only product we'll ever promote on our channel is a book by Claude Davis, a veteran prepper, about 126 superfoods and preservation methods from crisis times like the Great Depression and wartime that are impossible to find elsewhere. We decided to promote his book because we are the last generation able to share these techniques and superfoods to our children or grandchildren. It would be a shame to see this information about highly nutritious foods and preservation methods to survive crises disappear. You can also find a book about herbal remedies from Nicole Apelian on their store. If you're watching this on TV, you can look up our channel, Frugal Solutions, on your phone or tablet and find the books by clicking the link in our channel description or any other video description. The religious and cultural aspects of avoiding plastic go beyond just practical concerns. The Amish philosophy of simplicity and self-reliance plays a big role. Using traditional storage methods means you're not dependent on factories or stores. You can make your own ceramic crocks, maintain your own glass jars, and build your own wooden storage bins. It's about having control over your food from field to table. But it's not just about independence. The Amish have observed how plastic changed the way people think about food storage. When it's easy to wrap something in plastic and forget about it, you lose the connection to your food. Traditional methods require attention, care, and knowledge. You need to understand how different foods behave, what conditions they need, and how to spot signs of spoilage. It's a kind of wisdom that plastic packaging has made many of us forget. The economics make sense too. While a set of plastic containers might cost less up front, they need constant replacement. Traditional storage methods have a higher initial cost, but can literally last generations. One Amish community calculated that a family saves around $300 to $400 per year by not buying plastic storage containers. As they say, we're not poor enough to buy cheap things. There's also the matter of taste. Food stored in traditional containers often develops deeper, more complex flavors over time. Fermented vegetables in ceramic crocks, aged cheese in cheese caves, dried herbs in wooden boxes. These methods don't just preserve food, they transform it. Plastic, on the other hand, is designed to keep food exactly the same, which isn't always better. The Amish experience with plastic-free storage has become increasingly relevant as more people look for sustainable alternatives to plastic. But here's the thing. You can't just swap out plastic for traditional containers and call it a day. You need to understand the whole system of food preservation that goes with it. And that brings us to one of the oldest and most effective methods of food preservation known to humanity. Long before refrigerators hummed in kitchens or plastic wrap existed, people were preserving food through fermentation. The Amish have kept this ancient art alive, and their methods would make any modern microbiologist nod in approval. Those large ceramic pots sitting in Amish cellars aren't just containers. They're literally alive with beneficial bacteria doing the work of preservation. A single traditional Amish fermentation pot can hold between 30 to 40 pounds of vegetables. That's about the weight of a 4-year-old child, except instead of causing chaos in your living room, these vegetables are quietly transforming into long-lasting, nutritious food. The really amazing part? These same containers are often in continuous use for decades. One Amish family has a jar with a crack that was repaired in 1943, and they say the slight imperfection adds character to their sauerkraut. Though personally, I think that's just making the best of a container gone bad. The science behind fermentation is fascinating. When vegetables are submerged in a salt brine, Good bacteria, the kind that won't make you sick, start to multiply. These helpful little organisms produce lactic acid, which acts as a natural preservative. It's like having millions of tiny security guards protecting your food from spoilage. The process actually increases the nutritional value of the food. Fermented cabbage can have up to 20 times more vitamin C than fresh cabbage. Take that orange juice. Temperature plays a crucial role in fermentation. The Amish have learned through generations of experience that different temperatures create different flavors. Too warm, and your vegetables turn to mush faster than a teenager's resolve to clean their room. Too cold, and fermentation slows to a crawl. The sweet spot is between 65 to 75 degrees Fahrenheit, which is why you'll often find fermentation containers in Amish basements or spring houses where temperatures stay steady. The salt ratio in fermentation is another science that the Amish have mastered. Too little salt and harmful bacteria might crash the party. Too much salt and even the good bacteria can't survive. It's like trying to swim in the Dead Sea. The perfect ratio is typically around 2 to 3 tablespoons of salt per quart of water, though every Amish family seems to have their own secret formula. One elderly Amish woman claims she can tell if the brine is right just by floating an egg in it, though her grandson swears she's just showing off. What can you ferment? The list is surprisingly long. Cabbage becomes sauerkraut, cucumbers transform into pickles, and even green tomatoes can be fermented into something delicious. The Amish often ferment string beans, beets, carrots, and turnips. They've even been known to ferment watermelon rinds. Talk about waste not, want not. Each vegetable develops its own unique flavor profile during fermentation. It's like each jar is conducting its own flavor symphony. The traditional recipes passed down through generations aren't just about taste, they're about timing too. Different vegetables ferment at different rates. Cucumbers might be ready in a week, while properly aged sauerkraut can take 6 weeks or more. One Amish saying goes, "Patience makes the pickle," though I suspect that was invented by someone who tried to rush the process and ended up with mushy cucumbers. Perhaps the most remarkable aspect of Amish fermentation is how they maintain the process year after year without modern equipment. No pH meters, no temperature controls, just skilled hands and careful observation. They know fermentation is going well by the bubbles rising to the surface, the clarity of the brine, and the developing aroma. It's a kind of expertise that can't be learned from books. It has to be experienced. Speaking of experience, the Amish have learned over generations that where you store your fermented foods matters just as much as how you make them. But that's not just true for fermented foods. It turns out some foods are best friends, while others are worst enemies. The Amish have long understood that storing the right foods together, or keeping certain foods apart, can mean the difference between fresh produce in February and a cellar full of mush. Let's start with the matchmakers of the produce world. Apples and pears. These fruits work great together because they both like the same conditions, cool and slightly damp. They also produce similar amounts of ethylene gas, a natural ripening hormone. It's like they're speaking the same language. Store them together and they'll keep each other company for months. But then there are the troublemakers. Onions and potatoes? That's a relationship destined for disaster. Sure, they might seem like a perfect match. Both root vegetables, both like dark places, but put them together and things go south fast. The onions make potatoes sprout early, while the potatoes can make onions go soft and moldy. One Amish farmer compared it to putting 2 teenagers with crushes on each other in the same room. Nothing good comes of it. The science behind all this is actually pretty cool. Some fruits like apples, bananas, and peaches are what the Amish call gassy fruits. They release high amounts of ethylene gas, which speeds up ripening in other foods. This can be either helpful or harmful, depending on what you're trying to achieve. Want those green tomatoes to ripen quickly? Put them next to an apple. Want your potatoes to stay dormant? Keep them away from those gassy troublemakers. Temperature zones play a huge role too. The Amish create different storage areas with varying temperatures and humidity levels. Hardy vegetables like carrots and beets can handle cooler temperatures and higher humidity, while garlic and onions prefer things a bit warmer and drier. Mix these up and you'll have a produce disaster on your hands faster than you can say spoiled vegetables. The art of companion storage goes beyond just fruits and vegetables. Herbs play a crucial role too. Basil, for example, can help keep certain fruits fresh longer due to its natural antimicrobial properties. Some Amish families even place bay leaves among their stored produce to deter pests naturally, a trick that's been proven effective by modern science. Here's a funny bit of Amish wisdom. Apples are like gossipy neighbors. They'll tell everyone else's secrets. This refers to how apples can affect nearly every other fruit and vegetable around them. They'll make your carrots bitter, your potatoes sprout, and your leafy greens wilt. But put them with other apples or pears, and they're perfectly behaved. The Amish have also learned that some vegetables are great mediators. Cabbage, for instance, gets along with almost everyone. It can be stored near most other vegetables without causing problems. It's like that one friend who never gets involved in drama. Turnips and parsnips are similar. They're the Switzerland of the root cellar. But the real art comes in using these relationships to your advantage. Need to ripen a batch of green tomatoes before the first frost? A few apples in a closed container can speed up the process. Want to keep your potatoes from sprouting? Store them with beets instead of onions. Have some pears that are too hard? Put them next to some ripe bananas. It's like running a produce dating service. The key is observation. The Amish check their stored produce regularly, looking for signs of trouble. A single rotting apple really can spoil the whole barrel. That saying comes from centuries of experience. They'll tell you it's better to check daily and remove one bad apple than to lose an entire winter's worth of food. These companion storage methods are impressive, but they're just part of the story. To make them work, you need the right environment. That's where an ingenious Amish invention comes into play, one that uses nothing but the cool earth beneath our feet. Mother Nature ran the best refrigeration service long before electricity came along, and the Amish never forgot this lesson. A root cellar is basically a cave you build yourself, and it works better than any fancy kitchen appliance for keeping food fresh. Just ask any Amish family who's enjoyed crisp apples in March without spending a dime on electricity. Here's the magic. The Earth naturally maintains a steady temperature of 32 to 40 degrees Fahrenheit year-round, once you dig down about 10 feet. That's perfect fridge temperature. An Amish root cellar takes advantage of this by being partially or fully underground. One Amish farmer jokes that his root cellar keeps such a steady temperature he could store ice cream there if they were allowed to eat it. The storage capacity of these underground rooms is mind-boggling. A typical Amish root cellar can hold 600 to 1,000 pounds of produce. That's enough to feed a family of 8 through the winter and spring. An elderly Amish gentleman once told me, "Our root cellar held enough potatoes to feed Ireland." When I pointed out that might be an exaggeration, he winked and said, "Well, at least enough for a very hungry Irish village." But it's not just a big hole in the ground. There's serious engineering involved. Different foods need different conditions, so Amish root cellars have distinct zones. The bottom level stays coldest and most humid, perfect for root vegetables. Upper shelves are slightly warmer and drier, ideal for squash and pumpkins. Some families even install wooden slat shelving that allows air to circulate around stored produce. The humidity control system is brilliantly simple. The floor is usually just packed earth, sometimes with a layer of gravel. This natural surface releases moisture when it's too dry and absorbs it when it's too humid. No sensors, no electronics, just dirt doing what dirt does best. Though one Amish teenager did suggest installing a humidity gauge, to which his father replied, "If you can't feel the humidity with your nose, you've been spending too much time indoors." Ventilation is crucial too. Most root cellars have 2 vents, an intake near the floor and an exhaust near the ceiling. This creates a natural airflow that prevents mold and keeps the temperature steady. The Amish call this the breathing system. The cellar needs to breathe just like we do. Some clever builders even install adjustable vents to fine-tune the airflow depending on outside temperatures. The construction has barely changed in centuries because it works so well. Stone or concrete walls, a sturdy door with a good seal, and proper drainage are all you really need. Many Amish families are still using root cellars built by their great-grandparents. They just need occasional maintenance and maybe a new door every few decades. As one Amish builder put it, "We build them to last longer than the food inside." Temperature monitoring in a root cellar is done the old-fashioned way, with your senses. The Amish develop an instinct for when the temperature is right. They'll tell you that if you see your breath, it's too cold, and if you don't feel a slight chill, it's too warm. This might sound imprecise, but it's worked for generations. Besides, as one Amish grandmother pointed out, thermometers can break, but your nose always works. Organization is key in a root cellar. Foods are arranged not just by type, but by how long they'll last. Quick-to-spoil items go near the front, while long-lasting vegetables like carrots and potatoes go toward the back. It's like a natural version of the first-in, first-out system used in modern warehouses. While root cellars are amazing for storing fresh produce, they're just one piece of the preservation puzzle. Sometimes you need to keep food for even longer, or you want to preserve summer fruits for winter eating. That's where the Amish turn to another time-tested method that transforms glass jars into tiny time capsules. Glass jars might look simple, but in Amish hands, they become time machines for food. Those rows of gleaming mason jars lined up on shelves aren't just pretty. They're packed with summer sunshine waiting to brighten up winter meals, and unlike plastic containers that might last a year or two, these glass warriors can serve for decades. The numbers tell an amazing story. A well-made mason jar can last 20-plus years with proper care. One Amish family still uses jars from the 1950s, complete with the original glass lids. Their grandmother claims she can taste which jar is which by the age of the glass, though everyone's pretty sure she's pulling their leg. An average Amish household goes through about 400 to 600 jars during canning season. That might sound like a lot, but break it down and it makes sense. 50 jars of tomatoes, 40 jars of green beans, 30 jars of peaches, 25 jars of applesauce. It adds up fast. One Amish woman joked that she counts her wealth in mason jars instead of dollars. The two-piece lid system is a marvel of engineering that hasn't needed improvement in over 100 years. The flat metal lid has a rubber seal that, when heated, creates an airtight bond with the jar. The outer ring holds everything in place during processing, but can be removed once the jar is sealed. It's like a tiny submarine hatch for your food. Different foods need different methods. High-acid foods like tomatoes and fruits can be processed in a water bath canner, basically a big pot of boiling water. But low-acid foods like green beans and carrots need pressure canning, which gets much hotter. As one Amish father puts it, pressure canners are like teenagers, powerful but need careful watching. The Amish have developed a sixth sense for proper headspace, the gap between the food and the lid. Too much space and the jar might not seal properly. Too little and the contents could expand and break the jar. They'll tell you it should be just enough room for the food to dance, but not enough to throw a party. Temperature is crucial in canning. The food must be hot enough to kill any harmful bacteria, but if the jars get too hot too quickly, they can crack. Amish kitchens during canning season are like carefully orchestrated dances, with jars moving from preparation areas to canners to cooling racks in precise timing. One wrong move and you'll have what they call a glass salad on your floor. Every Amish family has their own special recipes and techniques passed down through generations. Some swear by adding a pinch of salt to fruit preserves to enhance the flavor, while others have secret timing methods for perfect pickles. These family traditions are guarded as carefully as the jars themselves. Storage after canning is just as important as the process itself. Jars should be kept in a cool, dark place. Light can fade the color and affect the taste of food. The Amish often build special shelving units with slight tilts forward so you can easily see what's in each jar without having to handle it. They call it their library of food. Here's a fascinating fact. Glass actually gets stronger with proper use. The heating and cooling during canning can strengthen the glass structure, which is why those old jars are often tougher than new ones. Though, as one Amish grandmother warns, don't get cocky. Even the strongest jar breaks if you drop it on a stone floor. The Amish take pride in their canning results. Clear liquids, bright colors, and proper seals are marks of success. They can tell if a jar will keep just by looking at it, though they still date everything carefully. Better to know how old something is than to guess after your memory fails, as the saying goes. But what about foods that don't do well in jars, or when you want to preserve things without heating them up? That's when the Amish turn to one of the oldest preservation methods known to humankind. It doesn't need special equipment, doesn't use any energy, and can actually make some foods taste better than fresh. The sun has been drying food for free since the beginning of time, and the Amish have turned this natural process into an art form. Their traditional drying methods work so well that modern food scientists are still trying to figure out all the reasons why. While electric dehydrators buzz away in modern kitchens, Amish families are quietly producing perfectly dried foods using nothing but air, sunshine, and generations of know-how. What gets dried? Almost anything you can grow. Apples turn into chewy rings that taste like candy. String beans become leather breeches that can season soups all winter. Corn transforms into crispy snacks that kids fight over. Even watermelon can be dried into candy-like treats that one Amish grandfather swears taste better than store-bought sweets, though his grandkids might disagree. The science is surprisingly simple. Remove the water from food and bacteria can't grow, but it's the technique that makes all the difference. The Amish use special drying racks that look like giant ladder-shaped shelves. These can hold up to 50 pounds of food at once, with each level getting plenty of air circulation. If air can't dance around your food, one Amish farmer says, it's not going to dry right. Timing is everything in food drying. Different foods need different amounts of time, anywhere from 6 hours for herbs to 36 hours for thick fruit slices. The Amish have clever ways to test for doneness. Properly dried apple slices should crack but not break when bent. Dried corn should shatter like glass when hit with a spoon. Jerky should bend like a piece of leather but break clean when folded. Temperature control happens naturally through careful placement of drying racks. Morning sun provides gentle warmth, while afternoon shade prevents over-drying. Some families use their porches where overhanging roofs create perfect drying conditions. One creative Amish family even built a special drying shed with adjustable panels that track the sun's movement. But it's not just about hanging food out to dry. Preparation is crucial. Fruits get dipped in lemon juice to prevent browning. Vegetables might be briefly blanched to lock in color and nutrients. Meat for jerky is sliced with the precision of a surgeon. Too thick and it won't dry properly. Too thin and it becomes too brittle. Cutting jerky is like cutting hair, one Amish butcher jokes, except you can't glue it back if you mess up. The drying season brings its own rhythm to Amish households. Early mornings are spent harvesting and preparing food, afternoons monitoring the drying process, and evenings packing away the day's dried goods. It's a family affair, with even young children helping to arrange fruits on drying racks or turn herbs spread on screens. Here's a surprising fact. Properly dried foods can retain up to 90% of their original nutritional value. The process actually concentrates some nutrients, making dried foods nutritional powerhouses. Plus, dried foods weigh about 1/6 of their original weight, making storage much easier. A whole garden's worth of tomatoes might fit on just a few shelves when dried. The Amish have special tricks for checking humidity levels without any equipment. They'll tell you that if dried beans crack instead of bending, the air is too dry. If apple slices take more than 2 days to dry, it's too humid. These observations have been fine-tuned over generations until they're as reliable as any digital sensor. Storage of dried goods requires just as much attention as the drying process. Glass jars with tight-fitting lids are perfect, but they must be completely airtight. One speck of moisture can ruin months of work. The Amish often add a dried bay leaf to each container as a natural preservative and bug deterrent. Some families even hold their dried food jars up to sunlight. If there's any condensation at all, back to the drying rack it goes. While the sun provides free drying power most of the year, sometimes nature needs a helping hand. That's where another brilliant piece of Amish engineering comes into play, a cooling system that runs on nothing but gravity and the natural flow of water. Before electricity brought us refrigerators, the Amish perfected a cooling system that still works today, the spring house. Built over natural springs or streams, these stone buildings are nature's refrigerators, keeping food cool through the hottest summer days without using a single watt of power. The genius lies in the flowing water. Cold spring water maintains a steady temperature around 52 degrees Fahrenheit year-round, perfect for keeping milk, butter, and other perishables fresh. One Amish farmer claims his spring house keeps butter so firm in August that you could build a house with it, though nobody's tested that theory yet. Stone walls provide the foundation of a spring house's cooling power. The thick masonry absorbs cold from the water and releases it slowly into the air, creating a natural air conditioning effect. Most spring houses have walls at least 2 feet thick. If you're building a spring house, an Amish builder once told me. And you think the walls are thick enough, add another foot just to be sure. The interior design is a masterpiece of simple engineering. Multiple levels of stone shelving rise above the flowing water, creating different temperature zones. The lowest level, closest to the water, stays coldest, around 50 degrees Fahrenheit. Each higher level is slightly warmer, letting families store different foods at their ideal temperatures. Cream and butter go on the bottom shelves, fruits and vegetables higher up. A typical spring house can cool 30 to 40 gallons of milk daily, plus butter, cheese, and fresh vegetables. The water flowing beneath the shelves doesn't just cool, it also maintains perfect humidity. Unlike a modern refrigerator that dries out food, a spring house keeps produce crisp and fresh without plastic wrapping. Maintenance is crucial, but simple. Weekly cleaning keeps the water channel clear and prevents algae growth. Some families add small fish to their spring house streams. They eat mosquito larvae and help keep the water clean. One Amish woman jokes that her spring house fish are the only pets she doesn't have to feed. The location of a spring house is critical. It needs to be close enough to the main house for convenience, but far enough to catch clean spring water before it reaches the surface. Most are built into hillsides using gravity to keep water flowing. The best spots are often discovered by watching where snow melts first in spring. These are usually where underground springs come closest to the surface. Here's a fascinating detail. Spring houses often double as water filtration systems. As water flows through channels in the floor, it's naturally filtered by layers of sand and gravel. This provides clean drinking water along with cooling power. Some spring houses have been providing clean water to Amish farms for over a century. Temperature monitoring in a spring house happens the old-fashioned way, by feel. The Amish develop an instinct for when the temperature is right in different areas. They'll tell you milk should feel cold enough to make your teeth hurt when stored properly. One elderly Amish man claims he can read his spring house temperatures more accurately than a thermometer, though his grandchildren remain skeptical. But what about foods that need to be preserved longer than even a spring house can manage? That's where the Amish turn to one of nature's most remarkable preservatives, a sweet golden liquid that's been keeping food fresh since ancient times. Raw honey might be the closest thing we have to a miracle food. When archaeologists opened Egyptian tombs that were over 3,000 years old, they found pots of honey that were still perfectly good to eat. The Amish haven't been storing honey quite that long, but they've mastered using this golden preservative in ways that would make those ancient Egyptians proud. The magic of honey comes from its unique properties. With a moisture content of only 17 to 20%, honey creates an environment where bacteria simply can't survive. It's like trying to live in a desert without water. Not going to happen. Plus, honey contains natural hydrogen peroxide and has a pH that makes it impossible for most harmful organisms to grow. One Amish beekeeper jokes that honey is nature's version of Fort Knox. Nothing unwanted gets in. But what can you actually preserve in honey? The list is surprisingly long. Fruits are the most common. Peaches, apples, and berries preserved in honey not only stay fresh, but develop complex flavors over time. The Amish often layer different fruits in the same jar, creating what they call honey rainbows. Each layer takes on subtle flavors from the ones above and below. Nuts get special treatment in honey storage. Walnuts, pecans, and almonds are submerged raw in honey, where they slowly cure and develop a uniquely sweet, savory taste. Some Amish families have jars of honey-preserved nuts that are decades old, though they rarely last that long because they're too delicious to resist. Even certain meats can be preserved in honey, though this requires special knowledge passed down through generations. The meat must be properly dried first, then sealed completely in honey. One Amish elder still tells the story of his grandfather preserving venison in honey during an unusually warm hunting season. That meat stayed good for 2 years. Temperature control is crucial for honey storage. The Amish keep their honey stores in cool, dark places, usually in glass jars with tight-fitting lids. While honey never really goes bad, it can ferment if the moisture content gets too high. Though, as one Amish grandmother points out, sometimes mistakes make miracles. That's how our family discovered honey mead. The antibacterial properties of honey actually increase over time. The longer honey sits, the more potent its preservative powers become. Scientists have found that older honey often has stronger antimicrobial properties than fresh honey. The Amish have known this for generations. They often save their oldest honey specifically for preservation. 1 pound of honey can preserve 2 to 3 pounds of other foods when used properly. The key is making sure everything is completely submerged. Any part of the food that sticks out above the honey line can spoil. The Amish use special weights made of food-grade glass to keep everything properly submerged. Some families mark their honey jars with dates, creating a sweet time capsule of preserved foods. The Amish also use honey's preservative powers in unexpected ways. A thin layer of honey spread on cheese helps prevent mold. A spoonful added to canned fruits helps them keep their color longer. Some families even coat the lids of their fermentation jars with a thin layer of honey to improve the seal. But preserving food isn't just about the methods, it's about understanding the rhythms of nature and working with them. As impressive as honey storage is, it's just one part of a larger system that changes with the seasons. In fact, the Amish approach to food storage follows a calendar as predictable as the sun rising in the east. The Amish calendar doesn't follow months so much as it follows food. Each season brings its own tasks, its own rhythms, and its own special kind of busy. As one Amish farmer puts it, nature tells us what to do each day. We just have to be smart enough to listen. Spring starts the yearly dance. As soon as the ground thaws, root cellars get their annual deep cleaning. Every shelf is scrubbed, every corner inspected. Last year's storage containers are checked and repaired. It's like spring cleaning on steroids, except instead of finding old socks under the bed, you might find that one potato that got away and decided to grow a whole family of baby potatoes. Summer hits like a freight train of activity. Those lazy summer days you hear about? Not in Amish country. From sunrise to sunset, families are harvesting, preparing, and preserving food. Berries need picking right when they're ripe. No scheduling allowed. Tomatoes wait for no one. An Amish mother once said her summer schedule was whatever's ripe today, which might mean processing 60 pounds of green beans one day and 40 pounds of blackberries the next. During peak summer preservation times, Amish kitchens run 12 to 14 hours a day. The work is hot, demanding, and absolutely crucial. One missed day of canning could mean a month without that food in winter. Young children help by snapping beans or sorting berries. Teenagers might complain about the work, but as one Amish father jokes, they complain less in winter when they're eating the food. Fall brings its own intense schedule. Root vegetables like carrots and potatoes need harvesting before the first hard frost. An average Amish family might dig up 500 to 600 pounds of potatoes in a single day. The timing is critical. Too early, and the potatoes won't store well. Too late, and you'll be digging through frozen ground. Fall is when you learn if your back is as strong as your determination. One Amish farmer laughs. Winter seems quieter, but brings its own preservation tasks. This is when most meat processing happens. Smokehouses run constantly, turning fresh pork and beef into hams and bacon that will last months. The cold weather is perfect for this. As one Amish butcher says, winter is nature's refrigerator. A single family might process enough meat in winter to last until the next cold season. But the genius of the Amish system isn't just in the timing. It's in how the community works together. Families coordinate their planting and harvesting schedules. Nobody needs to preserve everything because trading is part of the system. One family might focus on tomatoes while another specializes in root vegetables. By winter, everyone has what they need through a complex web of sharing and trading. The knowledge transfer between generations is just as carefully preserved as the food. Children learn by doing, working alongside parents and grandparents. By the time they're teenagers, most Amish youth know exactly when to harvest each crop, how to preserve it, and where to store it. We don't just preserve food, one Amish grandmother explains. We preserve wisdom. Weather patterns guide every decision. A late frost might delay planting, which shifts the entire year's schedule. A dry summer means more frequent harvesting of smaller batches. The Amish have learned to read nature's signs. When specific weeds appear, when certain birds return, when the air smells a certain way. It's a kind of natural calendar that's more reliable than any paper one. With all this careful planning and hard work, you might wonder if there's a simpler way. Why not just buy food from the store and keep it in plastic containers? Well, that brings us to the heart of the matter. The real differences between homemade and store-bought food storage. Money talks, and in this case, it's saying something interesting. The average Amish family saves $3,000 to $4,000 annually by preserving their own food. That might not sound like much until you realize it's the equivalent of a part-time job's worth of savings, earned while creating better food than you can buy in any store. Let's break down the plastic versus no plastic debate. Store-bought food in plastic containers is undeniably convenient. Grab it, store it, forget about it until you need it. But that convenience comes with hidden costs. The average American family throws away about 30% of the food they buy, largely because plastic storage gives a false sense of how long food will last. As one Amish farmer quipped, "Plastic containers are like bad politicians. They make promises they can't keep." Initial costs for traditional storage methods can seem steep. A good set of mason jars, proper fermenting containers, and root cellar supplies might cost $500 to $600 to start. But these items last for decades. One Amish family calculated that their storage containers cost about 2 cents per use over their lifetime. Try getting that kind of value from a plastic container that starts looking like it's been through a war after 3 uses. The time investment is significant. There's no sugarcoating it. An Amish family might spend 200 to 300 hours per year on food preservation. But they've reframed how they think about this time. It's not just food storage, it's family time, teaching time, and quality control all rolled into one. Every hour spent preserving food is an hour not spent at the doctor's, one Amish mother points out. Storage space requirements differ dramatically. Traditional methods often need more space initially, but they're more efficient in the long run. A well-organized root cellar storing 1,000 pounds of produce takes up about the same space as 4 large refrigerators, which would cost a fortune to run and maintain if the Amish used electricity. The environmental impact is worth noting. Traditional storage methods create almost zero waste. Everything is reusable, recyclable, or biodegradable. No plastic containers ending up in landfills, no packaging waste, no transportation emissions from food being shipped across the country. One Amish family's yearly waste fits in a single garbage can. Try doing that with modern storage methods. Quality differences are stark. Home-preserved foods retain more nutrients because they're processed at peak ripeness. Store-bought canned goods often use produce that's picked early and artificially ripened. The taste difference is so noticeable that one Amish teenager, after trying store-bought canned peaches at a friend's house, asked if they were actually peaches or just peach-flavored something. There's also the resilience factor. When supply chains break down or stores run low, families with traditional storage methods barely notice. During recent global events, many Amish communities actually ended up helping their English, non-Amish neighbors with food supplies. As one Amish elder said with a smile, "The old ways become the reliable ways when the new ways stop working." Knowledge and control over your food supply is perhaps the biggest advantage. The Amish know exactly what's in their food, how it was grown, and how it was preserved. No mysterious ingredients, no chemical preservatives, no wondering whether that expiration date really means anything. "We don't need labels," one Amish woman jokes, "because we are the label." The final verdict: both systems have their place. But as our world faces increasing questions about sustainability and food security, those old-fashioned Amish methods are looking more and more like the wave of the future. After all, they've already proven they can work for centuries without fail.